Venezuela is a country with the largest oil reserves in the world. Logically, one would expect this to bring wealth and stability, but reality turned out to be the opposite. At the end of the 20th century, Venezuela was not a failed state. The turning point came in 1999, when Hugo Chavez came to power. He made a decision that became crucial for everything that followed. He nationalized the oil industry. Control over oil production and revenues was transferred to the state. In essence, Chavez declared, "Venezuelan oil belongs to the Venezuelan people, not to foreign corporations." For the United States and American oil companies, this was a serious blow. They lost direct access to the largest oil reserves in the world, right next door. From that moment on, Chavez became an inconvenient leader, and relations with Washington grew tense. Systematic pressure began. Political, diplomatic, economic. Investments declined, trust eroded, confrontation intensified. As long as oil prices remained high, Chavez's model worked. Revenues were directed to social programs, education, and healthcare. But at the same time, the economy became increasingly dependent on a single resource: oil. In 2012, the Venezuelan leader was gravely ill. Realizing he might not survive, Chavez addressed the nation, urging Venezuelans to support his successor, Nicolás Maduro. After Chavez's death in 2013, elections were held. Maduro won by a narrow margin, and his victory largely rested on Chavez's political legacy and authority. Maduro's rise to power coincided with a collapse in global oil prices. The country's revenues fell sharply. Management failures, corruption, and the lack of economic diversification became impossible to ignore. At this point, the United States moved to the next stage: harsh sanctions. In 2015, Venezuela was declared a threat to national security. Sanctions were imposed on the oil sector and the financial system. Oil exports were restricted. Access to money and global markets was cut off. The economy began to collapse. Hyperinflation, shortages, wages lost their value. Mass migration followed. Against this backdrop, a convenient image was formed: Venezuela as a failed state, Maduro as an illegitimate dictator. In 2019, Juan Guaidó entered the scene. He declared himself interim president of Venezuela, without elections, without a popular mandate. And yet, that was enough. Within days, he was recognized by the United States and dozens of allied countries. Guaidó became a useful instrument of pressure. Through him came calls for the army to defect, street protests were organized, and attempts at a coup were made. Venezuela continued to be economically strangled. Sanctions remained in place. Financial channels stayed blocked. The country was pushed to a point where it could be shown to the world as proof. Look what happens when a state tries to go its own way. The culmination comes when the very forces that had spent years deepening the crisis arrive on military vehicles as saviors, under the slogans of democracy, with promises of stabilization and recovery, but with the same interest they had from the very beginning: control over Venezuelan oil. Venezuela was not destroyed overnight. It was broken slowly, step by step. First, it lost control over its oil. Then, its economy was suffocated. Then the consequences were shown to the world, and they said, "We are here to save you." But this is not salvation. This is the return of a trophy. The story of Venezuela is a warning, not about socialism, not about dictatorship, but about what happens to a country that tries to control its own wealth without the permission of the powerful.